welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. I'm really excited to talk with our two guests today, Julie Kline and Sarah Jacobus, about creative aging. I don't know, ladies, if it's just because I see myself in that title about aging. I'm not sure, but I think this is a really important concept that we're going to be chatting about today because we're going to be talking about how we can engage our nonprofits in this, even if maybe they haven't thought about this, right? This type of programming. So I'm really excited to have our friends from Lifetime Arts chatting with us. And so I'm really, really interested in what they have to say. You know what? I'm also very interested in promoting our presenting sponsors. Most all of these folks have been with us since we started the Nonprofit Show now 6 years ago and nearly 1,300 episodes ago. And these folks include Bloomerang. I know it is a wow moment. Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, and Fundraisers Friday. I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy, and I'm super proud to be a part of this amazing co-host panel. But more importantly, I'm really excited to welcome back Julie Kline, Director of Program Strategy at Lifetime Arts, and a new friend from Lifetime Arts, Sarah Jacobus, a creative writing trainer. I mean, Lifetime Arts trainers, wow. Sarah, you've got to be pretty busy.
Quite busy. Certainly Lifetime Arts and other creative aging classes that I teach, plus a few other day jobs. Yeah, keep me quite busy.
Amazing. Well, Julie, remind us what Lifetime Arts does and how you all work within this ecosystem of the nonprofit sector.
Thanks, Julia. And it's also really great to be back and talk more about this with you because I loved our conversation back in January. So Lifetime Arts really is a service organization for the emerging and emerged field of creative aging. And really, we define that as any kind of arts engagement, arts education for older adults. Our goal is really to bring together the people, the ideas, the strategies, the funding to make sure that we're weaving creative aging into the fabric of our communities. So we do that in a lot of different ways. We create new initiatives to seed and launch the work. We do a ton of trainings, also coaching, lots of professional development services for folks that are already engaging in the arts with older adults or who might want to add this to their portfolio of services. And we also do a lot of work just bringing practitioners together to begin to really embed creativity into policy for across aging services and aging policy and care.
You know, it's absolutely riveting to hear you say that, because I feel like when we talk about an aging demographic and changes in our society, it's health, it's physical health and not creative health or mental health as much. And so I'm absolutely intrigued by this nexus. And I'm wondering, Sarah, what you see. I mean, is this the Lifetime Arts? Is this like a hard sell? Or do people go, oh yeah, I get it now? I mean, what does that look like?
Well, I want to just come back to a point that you've raised, which is that older adults tend to be a very medicalized population related to in terms of physical health. And so you're right that to think about all the other possible dimensions of quality of life for older adults can be a very new concept. And so I think what our experience has been, I've been a trainer with Lifetime Arts for 4 years now. Wow. And what I've seen, and also in my own work prior to that and continuing, is that once potential participants, once people involved with different kinds of organizations and agencies see it in action, that it's very alluring and it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't really require a hard sell, but mostly just showing what it's like. In all of our trainings, we do a demo class, a demo creative aging class, so that participants actually are in the room as they would be if they were in a creative aging class, and so really get to experience it firsthand.
Okay, well, you've rocked my world a couple times already because I witnessed it to you in the green room that you look exactly like one of my favorite people that ever walked this planet. And so that's just crazy. But I love that you use that word medicalized. I've never heard that. And the way you phrased it, it just paints that picture so clearly. And so, to so many of our viewers and listeners, what a great term to start using moving forward. So you've painted the picture about kind of what's going on. I would like to step back and then step back into why the two of you got involved. And so, Julie, I'm going to start with you because you don't have any white hair.
No, you don't see it in this angle.
But
Mhm.
why did you start thinking about this and getting engaged?
You know, it took me a while to really figure out the exact nexus point. I started to get involved in this work, and then I thought back to when I was, maybe 8 years old, and I was always loved theater, always loved performing. But in this moment, I actually wrote plays and monologues for my grandparents to perform. So I was always doing
Oh,
creative aging. I was very close with my grandparents. They both, my grandfather had been in the service, but he also was a writer of beautiful short stories, sort of about his whole life's journey. And my grandmother was a visual artist whose biggest talent, I also think, was just interrogating and interviewing people and pulling out of them special details about their lives. She was
yeah.
excellent at that. So my connection really, I think, stems from that. And then once I got involved in theater, in New York City, I came across a group called Roots and Branches Theater, which was an intergenerational theater company made up of folks in their 20s and folks in their 80s and beyond. And once I saw older adults on stage expressing their own life stories and expressing their own experience of their life at that moment as an older person in New York, I thought, one, this is really avant-garde. And also, this is actually very much what I think, in that case, theater should be about. And the more I started getting involved in creative aging, I just truly fell in love with both the possibilities for participants and then the possibilities for me. I got to learn more. I got to understand other generations. And I think that's what, the best thing that art can do.
Yeah, I love that. So, Sarah, you've been in the thick of things, training for 4 years. That's really interesting because you came into this during COVID, correct?
I did. I did.
Holy cow. So, talk to us about that journey because that's a trying time for everybody, let alone training in the arts.
Well, the journey started actually mid-century, but I won't go back that far. But I left a job with I am a social worker by profession, one of them, and was working with a large social service agency as a frontline social worker here in Los Angeles, and had been trained in a couple creative aging practices for people experiencing memory loss.
Mm.
And and started a group at the senior center where I worked, and then realized that that was what I loved doing the most. That really felt like a calling.
Mhm.
So I cut loose from the agency and struck out on my own, doing groups in residential care communities, senior
Mhm.
centers, adult day programs, and primarily at the beginning with people with memory loss, and then sort of branching out to people who weren't in that category. And then the COVID lockdown happened, and I basically lost all my work.
Yeah.
Have been able to bring some of it back on Zoom and just a little bit in person now. So Lifetime Arts really came along for me at a very good time, and
Mhm.
was a way of integrating the actual practice experience that I had with learning more about the bigger picture,
Mhm.
and taking more of a macro view of creative aging. And it's been really rewarding, continuing to do both.
Yeah. I've got to believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that your education in social work probably never addressed the two issues of aging and creative arts, right? I mean, was
Well,
that
I
ever?
have to say, the senior center where I worked did some of the things that the creative activities that all too often are the only ones that are presented to older adults, making craft projects for holidays. And I don't mean to sound glib. I mean, I think any kind of creative practice is worthwhile, stringing beads. But what I brought to the agency with the storytelling group, with a creative writing program was new to the agency and really took some negotiating with the director, who wanted to make sure, of course, that I was doing all the other parts of my job in addition to what I love to do the most.
Right. It's so interesting. Well, I want to kind of move forward with the question, why is creativity key to health? As we're aging, I mean, again, you rocked my world with Medicalized, because I can just see you, that one word. It's so powerful and so it's such a trajectory, right? How do you add in creativity, and why does that work? And so, Julie, let's start with you. What do you see that doing to folks as we age?
Sure. I mean, there's so much research, right, Julia? And we spoke about some of this on the last episode. Gene Cohen's study with out of George Washington University being one of the preeminent. But basically, it is just proven that as folks engage in the arts over time, and as they're aging, they go to the doctor less. They have fewer medications. They have a less risk of falls. They get more active in their lives. So that's all proven. I think that something that Dr. Cohen speaks a lot about is, it's a really important part of our lives as we age, that we feel we have some choice and we feel we have some control. Every time you're engaging in an arts practice, you are choosing. You're choosing what color to do. You're choosing what word to use. We're creative at every moment of our lives, but especially when we are learning new skills and trying to put those to use when we're expressing ourselves. There's just such a myriad of choices and brain connections that are happening. The biggest thing, of course, too, is social connection. And when we're talking about creative aging, we're talking about a match between these two things: building new skills and making new friends. And there's just something, I'm a theater person, so I'm going to say, of course, in theater, but I think in any creative practice, the folks that you connect with as you're on your creative journey, those connections are just unlike any other. And so, a big part of aging services these days is to try to find ways to ease this really, isolation epidemic that we're in, and especially affects older adults much more than, any other age group, although young people are now catching up a bit with their experience of isolation, I should say. But what's so important about this kind of ongoing practice is those social connections that are made that really ease this experience of social isolation.
Sarah, one word that stuck out from Julie's response is empowerment. And I would have never added that word to the concept of creativity, but I can see it. Like, you're choosing the words to use, you're choosing the colors, the medium. It's a very interesting aspect.
I think it's absolutely an essential part of this process. And I would add, in relation to that is the issue of role loss that many older adults are experiencing. People who have decades in work, whether meaningful or not, a career, and who retire and find themselves without something that's been a huge part of their lives. Or older adults who have lost spouses, who have moved to another community and have to start over in terms of developing a social circle and a community. And so being in a creative aging class is really establishing a new sense of identity as a visual artist, as a storyteller, as a performer. And that's something that absolutely is empowering to individuals and infuses quality of life with a whole new kind of energy. That's just beautiful and really exciting to see that process happen.
Okay, so this is a curveball. So get up your catcher's mitt, because does this vary with gender, like how women age versus how men age? Do you see that? Because sometimes I feel like men of a certain demographic or aging demographic, and maybe I'm pointing to myself here, see creativity as like women's work, or that's what ladies do, right? Do you ever see that?
We get this question a lot, so I'll talk,
Do
and then
you?
Sarah, you can add. Well, it is, in my experience, fairly accurate that there does tend to be more older adult women that come to, maybe programs that come to senior centers that participate in arts programs. I think that is the case. And I think that there's a big movement to how do we engage older men into these kinds of programs. But I've also had equal success with older men as well. I think that sometimes, not to make a generalization based on gender, everybody is different, but I do think that sometimes older men are finding connections in different ways. They're finding social connection maybe through sports. Maybe they're finding social connection through playing pool at the senior center. They might just be gravitating towards different activities. But there also, of course, are, when we say art, people automatically just think just watercolor. And that's not true, right? There are a lot of art forms that might be more attractive to men. It could be digital photography. We support a lot of programs out west. There's things like rawhide braiding, or there's, painting water, like duck decoys, like there might be leather crafts. There's like all, art can take any form. So we just want to make sure that we're being responsive to the folks we're wanting to serve. If you're wanting to serve and pull in older adult men maybe to your services, you might want to think about what are the art forms that are going to appeal to them.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because when you started listing that group, I'm thinking of like lapidary and metalwork and all of these things that might, and certainly woodwork that might attract men, but then they're probably isolated from women. It's probably, becomes more gender specific on some of these things.
But
Sarah?
I would say in terms of gender and what the creative practice is, that there are many women who are interested in things like metalwork and some of the things that you just mentioned. I think, and I am going to generalize, informed by experience, I think women are more adventuresome in many ways than older adult men, and more willing to try something that's new, more willing to step out of a comfort zone that may be, a bigger stretch for older adult men. And I completely agree with Julie, of course, that really being attuned and finding out what would appeal, what can be offered that would draw more older adult men into the fold is really worthwhile.
Yeah. It's such an interesting discussion because, Julie is a program strategist. You have to think about these things before you just release a great idea. And great idea is a great idea, but it has to connect and it has to work. And it also, dare I say, has to be fundable, right? It has to attract the attention of funders, or, as Sarah said, in her previous life, she had to kind of convince internally leadership that this would work, right? So let's talk about that nexus between nonprofit groups that maybe haven't really thought about adopting this type of programming, but could be looking at it. Like, how does the collaboration look like, and why should we be thinking about this? So Julie, I'll have you start.
Yeah, I guess I just want to, to start, Julia, but, with the demographic shifts, we've really, very, very soon, there's going to be more folks 65 and up than in 18 and under in our country. So I think we all need to change the way we're looking at who we're serving, and any nonprofit needs to think about how they're serving this demographic. I think we all should be considering ourselves part of aging services. So that's just, first baseline. Then I'll also say that creative aging is really not a one sector project, and all of our initiatives inevitably bring together different sectors. So, and in our trainings, we speak about this so much, whether this is on the local level, whether you are a local, senior serving organization and you need to reach out to the local library, whether it's at the state level or really even, regionally and nationally. No one sector can sort of solve this problem of social isolation for older adults, or needing to really diversify our programs and services and care for older adults. So it's really about looking at where might this work intersect with your mission? And then who can you partner with? Who might understand older adults more in your community? Or maybe you're serving older adults, but you want to partner with an arts organization, that can actually bring that aspect. So that's a big thing that we talk in our training. It's all about partnerships.
Yeah, very interesting. Sarah, I've got to believe that over the trajectory of your career, you've seen partnerships do really well and maybe some that haven't done so well. Do you see a through line of what makes that partnership more successful than others?
I think that when a potential partner, a lot of it is in the approach. A mentor of mine in the creative aging world uses the term the elegant invitation, which I have adopted as my own. But the way that we approach potential partners and are able to bring not only the research and all of the background information that we have, but our own enthusiasm and what we can share about our experiences and our track record. And yes, I have had experiences in partnerships that worked beautifully because the partner really put the resources of their organization to the extent that they had capacity, but there was really a commitment there. But it does take that commitment. And then other organizations where the staff was just too overwhelmed to really be able to take on yet a new thing that they could really invest the time and energy that were needed. But it's certainly possible, and when it works well, it's important to do that. And I'm happy to say, I know Julie's going to talk more about this, but we've just introduced open enrollment trainings so that anyone who's interested in getting a really good foundation in creative aging principles, the experience of the demo class, is welcome to join us. And we've just had our first training in the month of April. And one of the things that was really interesting was the diversity of people who attended the training and where they were coming from. Some of whom already worked for senior centers and organizations serving older adults. But one example I'll bring up is a woman who worked at a botanical garden, who was interested in exploring possibilities for implementing creative aging programming there. So in terms of nonprofits that are not, whose orientation is not primarily arts oriented, we really encourage potential partners and everyone to think outside the box, that there's so many connections that can be made between the work that nonprofits are doing and what creative aging has to offer.
So Julie, talk to us about that. You all are sharing the knowledge and sharing the ability to train up and also open the door to some organizations that probably have never thought about this. What does that look like?
Well, first of all, I'll just say that our trainings are really fun. Our trainings are really creative because what we're talking about is creativity. So first of all, we have a lot of fun. We really make sure, of course, to get folks the basics, and that is those health benefits, that is, the concepts behind the work, right? And to really empower folks to be able to understand those talking points and then to talk about them, right? To share about the work and be able to advocate for whether they're doing a program or just, for the work overall. So that's a really important part. We make a lot of art, as Sarah was saying. We do some demonstration activities together. We show all the principles and concepts, how they actually come to life in an actual class. And that's a lot of fun. And then we do a lot of talking about what I mentioned earlier, partners. And really what that means is lots of times people don't even know that there's a senior center down the street or there is a memory care. They just don't, because unfortunately, a lot of these sites and these services are invisible until you need them. So we do a lot of conversations just about, what are the different services available? What are the different possibilities for partnerships? Maybe it's that Parks and Rec. that you want to partner with and do a program maybe. So just sort of mapping one's own community. And then we get to have fun as a community ourselves, like in the training, who's present in the room. Might there be some partnerships that happen right here? In the last training, it turned out there were two folks that did happen till this is a national training, two folks in Indiana that lived, down the way from each other. They're going to figure out a way to partner. So we're just trying to seed the work however we can. And what is really exciting about this training is, as Sarah said, folks come to this work in a myriad of different ways. We want to just open the door and educate people, and inevitably they themselves will be creative about the ways to then apply the principles.
That's exactly where my mind was going, was that if you can understand the demographic and the cultural aspect of it, then your creativity just seems like it can explode, because you'll understand what the resources are in your own community. I love the example of the botanical garden, thinking like, well, that would never work, but then how do you generate some new programming that's exciting? And dare I say, we mentioned it, fundable, a creative idea that a funder's going to look at and say, yeah, I can get behind that. Because that's a tough thing, especially right now in the climate that we're living in.
Something I'd like to add that we haven't touched on yet, that we cover in our trainings, is ageism, and the extent to which ageism gets in the way of people, of organizations, really having a broader view of what's possible with older adults. And it's part of our mission and part of the work that we do to encourage people to take a look at what ageism looks like around us, what it looks like in ourselves, how it might hinder us, and how many possibilities there are for growth, for the expansion of creativity in this population. And I think that that's a critical part of our work as well.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to your the way we started the conversation. It's a part of the education. We have to reframe all of these different pieces. And I find that to be really interesting. I have loved this conversation. I think it's just such a cutting edge thing to be talking about, especially as we navigate this demographic shift. I'm hearing more and more about this, not just because of my own age, but we had a guest on last week who reminded us that, this is one of the few times in American history where we have 4 generations all working at the same time. We have this aging population, this transference of wealth, all of this, bubbling demographic shifts bubbling to the surface, and yet we're not really talking about it. And so I love that you could join us today and really give us some ideas about how, no matter what our nonprofit is, we got to be thinking about this, and maybe there are ways to engage. Really a fun conversation. Julie Kline, Director of Program Strategy at Lifetime Arts, and Sarah Jacobus, Creative Writing Trainer. I'm going to add the word extraordinaire at Lifetime Arts. Check out lifetimearts.org, and you can learn more about their practice, what they do, how they train, where they can kind of help build some synergies across the country. I don't know if you picked up on this, but Sarah's in the West and Julie, you're in the East, correct?
Yep, New Jersey. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, working in 2 coasts and doing it so beautifully, I think there's some great lessons for all of us there. So ladies, thank you. What a great conversation.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Julia, for the invitation.
Yeah, it's really been interesting. I mean, you've given me a lot to think about, and I'm going to be really interested to see how this journey continues, because it's just such an interesting aspect. And again, as we said earlier, something that maybe nonprofits haven't really thought about, serving that demographic in this different way. So a lot of fun. I want to make sure that we call out our presenting sponsors. They are amazing organizations, and they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, and Fundraisers Friday. These are the folks that join us day in and day out. so that we can talk more and more about how to support the nonprofit sector and to make it grow and to make it flourish. Ladies, we end each and every episode of the Nonprofit Show with this mantra. And today it means something completely different, as it does many days. And today I'm thinking about the health of our communities and our societies and our demographics, certainly as we age. And the comment, it goes like this: to stay well so you can do well.